together, and that'll precede a round of individual sets of meetings across the country. So here are some of the places we're going to, and I'd invite your attention specifically to those in the far north to make sure this is going to be a national task force that's going to go everywhere it needs to go. In fact, I just came in yesterday for work on the task force. I was in Edmonton and Victoria on Tuesday. So we're covering the ground and are committed to an extensive, broadly based consultation with all Canadians everywhere. So in terms of the consultation process, I would encourage active participation of all of you. The task force invites your ideas, and these would come at us best, of course, if they come through Advocis. And they can come through early, or you can wait for a consultation document which will be published around the third week in February. So let me close or conclude with some observations on advice. It's pretty clear that the growth of many of the dimensions of the financial world have the potential to run ahead of all of us, even those of us, like all of you in the room, who are practicing professionals. As I mentioned along the way, information availability is not by itself leading Canadians along the path of financial literacy. I see advice as having a continuing critical role to play, not only in making information understandable, but also to ensure plans are carried out. In fact, I alluded earlier to the book Nudge by Thaler and Sunstein. I thought about encapsulating the title NAG as your role with your clients. So concluding observations, the task force believes that financial literacy is a vital life skill, and a great deal of hard work is going to be necessary to move Canada to a better place. As chair of the task force, I'm really looking forward to working with everyone in financial services, including Advocis, to leverage what's out there into a coherent and an actionable national strategy. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my formal remarks this morning. I'm very much hoping that you'll feel empowered, free, and energized to ask me some questions, and I'll do my very best to provide answers. Thank you. Question at the back.
Is the task force looking at the role of government at impoverishing Canadians?
I'll repeat, I'm not sure I actually caught the right verb, but it sounded to me as though, was the task force looking at the role of government in improving the lives of Canadians? It might have sounded like impoverishing Canadians, though. Was my second version closer? Yes. I think round the world, we live in an era of increasing government participation in our lives. You know, the last bastion of free enterprise, the United States of America, has had some of the greatest government intervention ever. And the role of the task force here is to endeavor to leverage the information and activities across multiple levels of government. We did, as part of our research, an analysis of touch points of government in the lives of individual Canadians, and we see that as yielding many opportunities to build a baseline of data going forward. But if you're not at all enthused about the level of regulation and the role of governments in our lives, there are not many places you can go to, and I go to a lot of countries where that isn't happening. I'd suggest to you that Canada is one of the more well-balanced, thoughtful, and reasonable jurisdictions that you're ever likely to find. Question here in the front row, and then I'll go to the back. I'll repeat the question.
Why does everyone you speak to always hold out Australia and UK as places to and the United States as places to emulate, while the other side you're saying we didn't experience the same kind of meltdown because our basic structures here are better than anyone else's? And when you talk to governments,
So I'll repeat, a précis, if you will, of the question. I'm not sure I could quite get it correct verbatim. But basically, historically, there's been a great deal of attention on countries such as Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States as role models for Canada going forward. And today, Canada is one of the few countries that's come through the financial crisis in very good shape. And these countries have done so much less so. Isn't there a disconnect here? I hope that does reasonable justice to your question. And I think the world is shifting and no longer sees the United States as the undisputed leader in financial services in the fashion it did, and in fact in insurance. With 50 state regulators, the United States is a very difficult jurisdiction to function in from an insurance perspective. And of course, in the United Kingdom, the FSA, which was the ultimate in the unitary form of regulation, a single regulator across all aspects, experienced some of the larger failures of its major banks, two of which I regret to say were Scottish. But and so what's going on here? I think you're seeing ground shifting. Australia has come through this quite well, as indeed has Canada, with a different system. And both Australia and the Canadians have a fair bit in common in their system. There are some important differences, but there's a certain amount of commonality. So I don't think you're going to see in future quite the same degree of respect accorded to either the United States or the United Kingdom for financial services regulation. You're seeing it today, that Canada is getting a lot more international attention, and therefore these are not role models of the future, or at least in the near-term future, the next several years, and